sometimes business does feel like a zero-sum game. Hello and thank you for watching. A zero-sum game. Definition: a situation in which one person's gain is equivalent to another person's loss. So the net change in wealth or benefit is zero. Basically, what that's saying is that, or what that means is that in order for me to win, you have to lose, or vice versa. And many people truly believe this is how capitalism works. Many people believe that you getting rich is only because you helped enough other people get poor or stay poor. You know, if someone studied capitalism for just a couple of minutes, they would know that that statement is obviously not true with regards to capitalism. However, with that being said, there's definitely no denying that in some cases, something going bad for one company, that could definitely be profitable for another company. A couple of quick examples could be, let's say, Tom Brady, right? Tom Brady was drafted in the 5th round of the NFL draft. Tom was playing behind a Pro Bowl quarterback in Drew Bledsoe. Well, Drew got hurt, as you guys probably know. Tom came on the field, and the rest was history. Someone's demise led to someone's being the GOAT, greatest of all time, right? How about the UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship? They've been growing ever since Dana White took over that organization. That's a true accomplishment because they are ultimately competing for eyeballs between all other sports. Then COVID happened. All sports shut down. All but one, the UFC. People were dying to watch something, and that something happened to be them. Other sports' demise during COVID was the UFC's win. And a personal story, one that I heard today at a new church that I actually attended. It was packed, wall to wall. People were shoulder to shoulder. Every seat was filled. But apparently this church has been small for many, many years, right? And then all of a sudden, COVID hit. Other churches shut down, but not this one. They stayed open. People still wanted to hear the word. So people that would have never normally given this church a shot all of a sudden came to visit, basically because their church was shut down. And according to their attendance today, they never left. It really was a good sermon. Thank you, Sam, for the invite. And I can go on and on. But this leads me to the biggest business in the world, the US government. Both CPI and PPI came out last week. If we take a look at the numbers, let's take a look at CPI. Scroll down to the numbers. If you take a look here, it looks like year over year, inflation is at 3.2%. Month over month, 0.2%. And this is with all items. So what that is showing us is that inflation is still being sticky at roughly 3%, right? And in month over month, 0.2. So inflation is still going higher. This means that prices have still been climbing month over month and year over year. We are literally getting poorer every single month due to inflation. I mean, did you guys get a raise this time last year of 9%? Or a raise this time this year of 3%? No, right? But prices have been going up and we haven't been getting those raises. With that being said, even the good news, there's good news on fuel. If you guys take a look at this right here, fuel is down by 26.5%. As a matter of fact, all energy is down. But guess what's up again now? Fuel. Energy costs are going back up. So even the good news in the report is still not much good news. Now, how about core, right? Core CPI, meaning less food and energy. By the way, core CPI is what the Fed cares about more than food and energy, right? And this is the reason for this is because, as you can see, food and energy are very volatile. The pendulum swings too far to both sides at times. So core inflation, let's take a look at that. Core inflation is actually at 4.625, but they round up on this report. So they put it at 4.7. and it's right here, core inflation, all items less food and energy. So what that's saying is inflation is actually, according to what the Fed likes to use, is at 4.7% year over year. And if I look at it, it's at 0.2% month over month. Still not out of it. Now let's take a look at PPI, the Producer Price Index. CPI is to see how much cost of goods went up for us individuals as a whole. PPI is to see how much cost of goods went up for companies as a whole. Remember, most companies work based on margin. That's truly the reason why companies don't pay taxes. Don't believe the hype and all that stuff. If a company needs to make a 10% profitable margin and then you raise taxes, then hypothetically the company would make less money, right? Because you tax them more. But the truth is, if or when we raise taxes on the companies, then they just raise their prices to maintain that so-called 10% margin. So remember, raising corporate taxes only means you're voting to raise the price of the next Amazon purchase. But nevertheless, I digress. Back to PPI. Alrighty. So let's go ahead and go here. Producer Price Index. Let's take a look at where that's headed. We got to scroll down to the bottom here on this report. It looks like year over year, producer price index is at 0.3. Core producer price is at 0.2 month over month. And that is definitely better than what we're seeing for inflation as a whole. But don't get it twisted. Everything's still going up. And the fact of the matter is, inflation went up more this month than it did last month. So it went backwards, stating that essentially these price hikes or these rate hikes, they're working, but not in the manner that they want them to work. However, despite the fact that inflation is still sticking above 3%, I'm about to get on my optimism train. Why? Because we seem to be in what one might call a zero-sum game with China. Remember back in January, I stated that once China opens up, I anticipated workers in China to hit the gates running, have the supply lines open back up, and America maybe to get too many goods from China, which could possibly cause deflation. Well, obviously, that never happened. Why? Because when COVID hit, we got punched in the mouth with the realization of how dependent we are for China for everything manufactured. We couldn't even get a mask because it came from China. On top of that, China wasn't even forthcoming with the information that it had. They lied to us about everything. First, that there was even going to be a pandemic. Second, that the virus came from a bat when we know it was created in a lab. And third, they kept everything to themselves. They didn't allow outsiders to go to China and help us with the cure or anything, as a matter of fact. Unfortunately, we had to wait till we got it here in America to really know the depth of the disaster. So moving forward, we learned two things. One, we are way too dependent on China. And two, when a global crisis hits, we cannot trust on China's help. What was the unintended consequence from China's actions? America and American business started looking for other alternatives. We looked to the Philippines, we looked to Guam, especially India, right? You know, there's a saying, the world needs China and China needs the world. But what if that's no longer true? Last month, Chinese exports dropped by 14.5%. To put that into context, during the beginning of the lockdown for China back in February 2020, exports fell by 17.2%. Last month, China's exports dropped almost as much as when the country shut down a couple of years ago. With China producing but not exporting means that they have a whole lot of inventory. What happens when you have too much inventory and not enough sales? Deflation. Now, this video is already pretty long, so I'm not going to get into how bad deflation is for an economy, but let's just say deflation is worse than inflation. Prices fall, company margins shrink, people lose their jobs in times of deflations. It's all bad, and it's very sad for the people of China. Not the government, but the people. Now, why might this help us? Because China's deflation economy could possibly save our economy. With the price of goods dropping in China, capitalism will be forced to take a second look at China and the new savings that come along with that. And if you buy low in China and keep the same company margins with regards to profitability, that means you buy low, then pass that savings on to the customer. And if company A won't pass that savings on, then company B will, thereby putting company A out of business. Capitalism. There is no better way to get our prices down than by purchasing the product cheap to begin with. With the possibility of cost of goods or exports going down, just maybe that might be enough to get prices down to the consumer and back to comfortable levels again. So for people that believe in a zero-sum game, here's a good example. China's demise is possibly America's win. The question is, we've been trading with other countries because of China's action. Are we ready to revert back to massive trading with China in order to save a buck? Well, if their prices drop by half, then I believe it'd be irresponsible not to. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening. And please remember, life's not meant to be, it's meant to create. Too strong.